Hi, I'm Al and this is Burntwood Workshop. Today we're going to go over 3D engraving with the XTool S1. And this is what we're going to be engraving. I do this out of clear 3/4 inch pine. I routed a detail on the edge, give it a nice framed look. You can also frame them. And then what I'm going to go over is the settings, the engravings, painting, my process, and at the end we'll show what it looks like when we're done. Hope you enjoy. Okay, for my engravings, I start out with whatever size clear pine. So you want something without any knots, pretty wide grain. I put a 3/8 inch bevel on it, or not. I do several different ways, but this one's going to have a 3/8 bevel on it, clear pine. All right, so the first thing we want to do is focus. Then we're going to hit start marking and rectangle and start marking. And then we set our crosshairs up to the first mark, save it, and go back to our back corner and save it. And we are ready for that part. Hit end marking and done. Okay, now we saw from the laser end of things, this is what it looks like in Creative Space when we're setting this up. So a lot of this is basic, but just in case, you set your crosshairs on the piece and you focus it. And then once you're done focusing, you want to set your start marking. You can do rectangle, start marking, and you can do your settings on here. Push the button on the front, push the button on the front, end marking, and done. Hit open. It's going to come out it's too big to fit the canvas, so we're going to hit scale to fit canvas. We know that our piece of pine is 8.5 inches. So if we want this to go in there, we just go 7.5, and then we can drag it into here with it set up like that. Or you could just hit framing, mark the corner in a little bit and hit framing is another option, but I usually do the setup that way. So once you've got your image in, well, I just moved it. There, she's centered. Got your crosshairs there set up, she's centered. Okay, so then you're going to go to engrave. We're going to set our power. I usually go 55, but this one we're going to go 60 for a little bit deeper engrave. We're going to do 150 on the speed. We're going to go grayscale. We're going to do 200 lines per centimeter. And that's going to set us all up for this. And at this point, we hit process. Processing for a larger image like this takes a couple minutes. So once you hit process, it goes into the preparing preview. That takes a little while. And while you're waiting, you can sing a little song, do a little dance. If I'm not doing a video, I play a lot of music. So then you would hit start. And then it's going to send the file to be processed. And that takes a little bit longer sometimes. Just a sneak peek, as you can see, the S1 does a beautiful job of engraving. And this is the result with a 60% power 120 speed. I think the S-Tool does an absolutely beautiful job. So what we're going to do with this next is we're going to paint it. Alright, when I paint these, what I use is the acrylic paint. These are the metallics I use. And I use standard acrylic sometimes, like this. And then if I want the iridescence, I add an iridescent medium. It takes quite a bit of medium to actually get the iridescence you want, but it does work well. And then I start out with an angle brush. And we just go directly onto the wood. What I'll do is I'll just kind of give an example. And like I said, any one of these, you can make your own colors in iridescent, or you can just do them plain. I've done them both ways. But this one I just think looks really awesome with the iridescent paint. I do a lot of different 3D engraves. I do cardinals. I do a lot of cardinals. And the owls. And I do some skulls and different stuff like that. Okay, now we're gonna just show how to highlight these. When I put the gold on, I dry the brush off a bit. Well, that didn't take it all. Do a bit of a dry brush with the gold. So just kind of get the gold lightly on the brush so it doesn't fill in too much underneath. It just kind of rides on the top and highlights everything in gold. Gives it a kind of a lacy look, which already looks lacy, but if you infilled it, you wouldn't get as much of that texture. And then, just to kind of give an idea of what I done everything, okay, and then another thing I do is, I don't know if you can see well, but I use a stain on parts of it. And to get the stain to work, basically I just put it on with a Q-tip. And don't go too close to where they match, where you're meeting up with something else, because what can happen is, as you see, it'll bleed. So you got to kind of stay back a little bit and then work your way in. And that gives that a little bit of color. What I try to do is stay with, when I'm really wet with the Q-tip, I'll start away from it a ways, and then I'll work my way in as it gets drier. So something like that. And if we want to get down here, and that is stained up. And then you can kind of, afterwards you can come in with a paper towel and take some of the excess off so it's not too dark. Just going to get this outer part, but the rest of it I'm going to have to paint moving things around. It's hard to do on video. Put more gold. And this will absorb in, and you'll probably have to do a couple of coats to get your desired result. And then, just to show the basic idea on how I get everything done, this is going to be this part of the back looks like curtains, so we're going to paint those up. I think like they're curtains. Well, I think I might have got a little too pink on that color. That's not the color I was looking for. So, if we don't like what we got, we can come in and just take off a large part of it, retouch that, and then we'll mix something that we like better. So I wanted more of a red, so we're going to take a regular red, I'm going to take some of my iridescent medium, and I'm going to throw it on the floor. Right. So take your red and your iridescent medium, and you just basically mix the two together. Makes it all nice. And normally I'd have some music blasting, but I don't have anything I have the rights to blast, so we're gonna do this in silence, or without music. I'm actually quieter on these videos than I am normally, because I never really ever shut up. But except when I'm concentrating on painting, then I'm... Okay, so We're going to take our flat brush. We're going to make sure we don't have too much paint on it. And we're just going to go over it, something like that. And it does take a lot more of the iridescent medium than paint to get a good shimmer out of it. And I've done some dragons and a bunch of different stuff. So, being of the elder age, of getting up in years, my eyesight isn't what it used to be. So when I'm doing these, I have a magnifier with a light, and usually I just come in here and I can see better what I'm doing. Because I also do these in small magnets, but I get a lot better result if I work under here. Because my eyesight is not perfect anymore, or even great. Even with glasses, it's hard to see really well on the detail on these. So I use one of these magnifiers, which I picked up cheap at a yard sale, because I'm cheap, and makes life a lot easier. But here's where we're at so far. It's coming along, and I will keep at it, and I'll keep coming back. Another little trick is, if your hands are a little shaky, or if you just slip, I got a little bit of paint down on here. And if you want to get that off, you can take an X-Acto knife and just scrape it off, and it's gone. Okay, so we've got most of this taken care of. We got these leaves here and the body. And what I do with the body, just take a fine detail brush and just paint that in. And then we're going to turn this around. When you're doing this, you want to pull towards you. So you and there's one. Oops. And if you twist the brush a little bit, you can get a little more out of it. On these 3D engravings, some stuff that looks like it should be raised is actually recessed when it's generated, so it doesn't really always look like you expect when you're painting it. But usually when you paint them up, they end up, whether it's recessed or not, or raised, end up looking really good. Alright, I'm going to have to step off to the side for a second here and get in my mirror, or magnifier. And that is the body painted up. And then just keep your brushes clean. Painting the leaves, what we want to use is a lighter green to start, and then we'll highlight them with a darker green afterwards. So we'll start out just I just kind of lightly wipe across without pushing too hard. You push too hard and your brush will go off the high spots and you'll end up getting paint on your lower parts that you don't want. And with AI generated, you'll end up with parts where you're kind of confused on what is what. I had one of the haunted house ones, and it had 3 interlinking moons that looked quite strange. These take a better part of a day to do. Between the engrave time, and then the painting, and then after I paint them, I seal them with polyacrylic, and I put usually about 3 coats of that on. So you're a few hours into these by the time you're done. Unfortunately, I'm in a market where I have to travel a ways to sell high-ticket items because I'm out in the woods. So I'm trying to get things going online because that's about the best bet. Something like that. And that is that far along. When you're doing your painting, look at it from all angles, because right when you think you're done, you'll turn it and you'll find out you missed a whole side of something. And these usually take, on the wood, sometimes a couple of coats to get them to look good. Alright, so we're pretty much done. Had to do a little modification. What looks like curtains were a little too pink and glittery, so I toned those down with more red. May have to add some more red to it. Take several coats sometimes. And then on your leaves, you just want to take a fine brush and just draw some veins on it. Sometimes the stuff doesn't show up as much when you're doing it as it turns up when you're doing the polyacrylic afterwards. It really brings some of it out. But yeah, just add a little bit of contrast, and if you do a darker color, try to do it on the undersides of things so that it's acting like a shadow. That way your lighter part on top will look like a highlight, and that'll add a little bit to your painting. And that is about all we're going to do with this, I believe. I had to sand this down because the stain was too dark, but I was trying to figure out what this was. It turns out it looks like boards, so we sanded it down, make it look like boards. So this is our finished piece. These are the brushes I use for the most part. This is what I use most of the time, are these brushes. And then we started out with an iridescent red on here and turned out kind of pink, so I went over that with a red, and then we go with a light green on this, over that with a dark green to vein it and give it a little depth. And that is the end of that. And then our next step is going to be to polyacrylic it. I've sanded my edges for the flash. You get a little bit of flash burn on the edges sometimes. I sanded that off, and we're ready for the next step. So from here, I shake my polyacrylic well and make sure I'm spraying straight. And put a nice coat on of spray, and then afterwards I'll brush polyacrylic on to clean the nozzle. Hope you found this video helpful and hope you enjoyed it. This is the finished product, and that's done with the XTool S1. You saw all the settings, and when I finish it, I put 2 or 3 coats of polyacrylic on it, sprayed on first and then brushed on. I put a hanger, I put some felt feet, put my logo on it, and then I also offer stands for them with or without my logo. I just put that on there without my company name, and that is it. I hope you liked this. Like and share if you enjoyed it and if it was helpful.